Welcome to Australian Kadampa Stories, where we are exploring the spiritual lives of people practicing Kadampa Buddhism here in Australia. I'm your host, Colleen Isaacs. I'm from Kadampa Meditation Centre Australia and Kadampa Meditation Centre Melbourne. And today I am speaking with Kelsang Monlam. Now, interestingly, Kelsang Monlam is among the first people that I received
Oh, I didn't know
teachings
that.
from. When I was a Kadampa baby, she was living in Sydney, traveling down to Melbourne to teach on the weekends, and I didn't know much about what I was hearing, but I remember feeling like the teachings were really penetrating. And I still have images in my mind of those early Lamrim classes. She's a very strong but also very kind teacher, so I know we're going to learn a lot from her today. So, hello, Monlam. I'm so pleased to speak to
Hi,
you.
Colleen.
Welcome.
Nice to see you. I didn't know uh, yeah, that you're at those teachings. Great.
Yeah. Yep. And I still remember them,
Yeah.
yeah, which just shows what a powerful teacher you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you mind taking us back to the beginning? How did you find Kadampa Buddhism, and what was life like for you at the time?
Yeah. Uh, I found it came from a wish to start to explore something that was meaningful, and it's not that what I was doing wasn't meaningful, it was, but I had this wish to find a spiritual path, something that was an actual path. That was kind of the criteria for me. I didn't have anything definite around what it had to be, what it was going to look like, but it needed to be something that I could follow and that it was going to answer all the questions that I had, which were many. And so I had that wish for about a year, and there were some things in my life that were coming to an end, in that it was going to give me more freedom to explore that. And then someone close to me came home with a leaflet and wanted me to take them to a class which we didn't get to. So that's kind of another story in itself, how all of that came about. But that person, yeah, was for me, when I heard in Dharma about emanations, I thought that person was an emanation for sure. And so we didn't go to a class, but I went to the next year in February. I went to the Mahasiddha Kadampa Buddhist Center. It was still a Buddhist center at that point. And I went to a Matthias retreat. And yeah, that was it for me, really. I
So your first anything was
anything.
an Amaziah's retreat.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Wow,
And
wow. And it's thanks to those publicity fairies, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
dropping the leaflet that planted the seed and
yeah,
eventually got around to attending your first event.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, like most people, that leaflet, that really was somebody else wanting to go to a class. So they'd asked me if I'd take them. And I said, yeah, I would, but they were in their last year of high school. So it didn't, it didn't happen that year, but it just meant that the next year that leaflet was still sitting on the table. And so I I looked it up. I thought, okay, that's the place for me to start looking. And yeah, I went to a Matthias retreat. And then I kind of just attended some retreats, because back then, if you went to a retreat at a center, it was silent in the morning until about 1 o'clock. And so I really wasn't looking for something to join in that way. I wanted a spiritual path, but it suited me that, okay, if I go to the morning sessions, no one can talk to me. And so that's kind of what I did. I went to another retreat, and then I started going to classes, and I still, like, really wasn't, um, yeah, I wasn't thinking I'm going to, get involved in this, meaning,
Mhm.
yeah. But, uh, yeah.
So obviously that first retreat, there's not a lot of teachings in the Amadeus retreat.
There
Yeah.
were
So
none. There were
um,
none. Yeah,
not a lot or none.
none.
Um, so
Yeah, it
what
was
was it
just
about it that made you?
well, Gessler just, he just did his magic, and yeah, it just appeared in my mind. This is the spiritual path I'm I'm going to follow. Yeah. So
Wow,
yeah, and of course, I
that's
mean, I didn't know what.
that's so inspiring. That's amazing. And what was the first meditation that really moved your mind, or maybe when was the first time you felt like Dharma's really working for me?
Mm, I guess I mean I started going to the weekly class at the center, and I received teachings on patient acceptance, and I definitely needed those teachings. I was feeling a bit angry at the time, and I really connected to those teachings because I think you can't not. You hear teachings on patient acceptance, and the teachings were from back then. The weekly class was taught from a book, so we were receiving teachings from How to Solve Our Human Problems, and it was just perfect for me. Yeah, so it was like okay, and yeah, so and they're the teachings that's what I like to teach as well at GP, because I think that it helps people so much.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
they're life changing. Those teachings on patient acceptance.
Yeah.
Um, when did you start becoming really involved? Like this is my path. I'm gonna, you know, change my life to devote myself to this path. How long did that take, and what was the shift for you?
Mm. I guess look, it didn't really take long at all. It surprised me that I wanted to get involved, because I didn't have that intention when I first came, but
Hmm.
it just all happened like very quickly, and uh, it was I attended some things, and I remember Gen Dorning said to me once. He was my first teacher, and he said it was over the Easter period. They were all going down to, so February I'm at this Matthias retreat, and then in April they're all going down, like, so only like 6 weeks later they're going down to Melbourne to go to the Australian Dharma celebration. And he came down after class just the night before, or Thursday night, Wednesday night, and said, you should come down to, it didn't help that he described it in this way, but he said, you should come down with us to the mother center. And I thought, I don't think I'm going anywhere near a mother
To
center.
the mother
And
center.
it was just, so I didn't go, but it all sounded a bit weird. But uh, it just kind of went from there, and I was going along, and I started going to whatever was on at the center. And in particular, I was really looking for um, teachings on the truth, the ultimate nature of things. Like, I came with that question: how does everything happen? How does life happen? And what really is the nature of everything? Like, I wanted answers to those questions. Yeah, and I got them, of course. I got the teachings on emptiness and karma, and that kind of did it for me. Really, it was clear it was going to answer those questions that I had. I'd like to say,
Yeah,
like, I
that's
really wanted
wonderful.
to help people, and
And I love that about the mother center.
yeah, it was like it was like, yeah, okay, no, yeah, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to be able to say I had this deep wish to help people, but I really didn't, and it was really very much motivated by what I needed to know and find out and be able to practice for myself. You know, like it was definitely not perhaps the right motivation, but yeah, it changed. It changed in that year,
Well,
really. Mm.
yeah, and then it got you here as well. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
from
yeah.
picking up a leaflet, a year later
Mm.
going to a
Yeah.
retreat, and then ordaining. I mean, many years later, right? And becoming a resident teacher. I mean, what a journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It has been, and it's really due. It is really due to, you know, as Geshe says, you know, the kindness of other people. You know, like, and being able to see the right people appearing at different times that meant that I got there. You know, so
Hmm.
yeah, I think definitely.
Was there a certain aspect of the teachings or of the path that were challenging or confronting to you to begin with?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, like I avoided certain teachings and meditations that I just didn't want to know. And I can't, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that they were all the meditations on cherishing others, and I just didn't want to know. And it was like I didn't see how they were going to make any difference whatsoever in my life. Like, so I was happy to do, you know, meditations on death and precious human life, and I wanted to know about karma and emptiness. That interested me, and but my mind just didn't move much when it came to other people, to be honest, in that way. So I did find those challenging, and it took a long time to get, you know, to get past that. Really, not yeah,
Yeah, so some obstacles had to be removed. Was there a
yeah,
point
yeah.
where you noticed, oh, hang on, this has really changed for me?
Uh, yeah, you know, as Geshe said, as I was able to purify, you know, because I was going to all the retreats at the center, and I was doing, you know, Guru Yoga Mandala offerings and purifying, and I knew that I really needed to purify. That's something that was very. I mean, I knew what I'd done anyway, but I certainly knew that I needed to engage in purification practice, and that was first empowerment that I received was Vajrasattva at KMCA with Gen Rabton, actually. And yeah, so, you know, it was obvious to me that that's what I needed to do. And I could see a change happening in my mind from the point of view of it was becoming more peaceful. And and I and it became obvious to me that if I just kept doing this, then I could change. That, you know, change was possible for anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. What I love about that is, you recognize the obstacle, and you worked on it, but you weren't like banging your head against a wall. You were just seeing the obstacle was there and, applying the methods to work at it, patiently.
I
And
don't
then
know
you
how
got the
patient I
results.
was, to be honest. Yeah. I mean,
Over some
to be
time.
honest, there were days when I first, you know, received that empowerment and I was using that practice. There were days where I just said that mantra all day long. You know, I had certain problems happening going on, and it was just I just hammered that mantra of Vajrasattva for some time. But, you know, other than that, I knew that when I went to the center, my mind was peaceful. Um, yeah. So I did know, and I could see, you know, that it worked for people. You know, I found people to be very genuine and open, and yeah, I did know that if I just kept going, that it was going to work. Yeah.
Now, of course, when I first met you, your name wasn't Monlam.
It
You
wasn't.
hadn't ordained yet. Do you mind telling us about the decision to ordain? Yeah, what motivated you to do that and what it meant for you at the time?
Yeah, I. It really got to a point where I couldn't not ordain. So it just appeared in my mind. I had absolute. Not only did I have no intention of joining, the tradition, in the center with all the people, but I definitely had no wish to get ordained. It was not what I wanted at all when I first came. And but then as my mind did change and it just started to appear in my mind, and I ignored it for a little while, which I think was a good thing. But eventually I couldn't ignore it anymore. Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, Monlam, loved hearing about all of that, and also the honesty as well about just knowing where you're at the time, and just working with where you're at. That's I think really inspiring to all of us. Thank you. Now you're coming down to Melbourne in a couple of weeks to teach a retreat, the three principal aspects
Yeah.
of the path. Yeah.
Yeah.
For us, it's a long weekend here in Melbourne. I don't know if it's a long weekend Australia wide. I
Yeah.
think it might not be. It's one of those funny weekends where we all celebrate the monarch's birthday on different times. Is that
Yeah.
right?
I'm not sure. It is here. It's the Queen's birthday.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it is in
Yeah.
South Australia. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Um, but tell us about what people can look forward to with this retreat.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an incredible poem, and it's so powerful, so moving. I think some of the verses in particular that everyone can connect to are the verses on renunciation, where it talks about having a mind longing for liberation. So I think everyone has that mind. Everyone wants to be liberated from suffering. So it's, I know when I first heard that line, it was like, yeah, I've always had that mind, because we do want to be liberated from suffering. And then the next verse that conjoins, renunciation with our bodhicitta, where contemplating our own situation, we understand that's everyone's situation. And it's so, the lines are when it talks about being swept along by the four powerful rivers of suffering, the swept along by the four powerful rivers of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Uh, tightly bound by the chains of karma. It's so your mind can't not move, and then the
Hmm.
meditations on emptiness. So there's so much in those short verses. And again, it was, I had the good fortune to read a manuscript once when I was on security in the temple at KMCA, actually. And Mick came back from a festival with this transcript of the three principal aspects, and he was reading it himself. But every time he'd go out, I was in. It was back when we had security in the temple all the time, and he would give me the manuscript. So I probably shouldn't say that I wasn't meant to be reading it, but I was reading it while I was sitting in there for hours, sometimes when no one was in there. And yeah, I just thought, wow. And then, of course, Venerable Geshe gives us that transcript as the mirror of Dharma. So I think if people have, I mean, it's such a nice way to spend a weekend, to spend it in silence where it's comfortable because it's guided. And even if we never do anything like that again, it's such a meaningful way to spend a few days. but the power of those verses, our mind changes. It has to change. I think that that's the thing about Dharma, isn't it? That even if we come, resisting and not thinking we're going to do this or that, but it has the power to change us. It ripens things in our mind, and we're surprised. It's like, what? Oh, and yeah. So the power of Dharma, the power of the truth of Dharma. So I think, yeah, for anyone, if they're thinking about it or thinking, oh, that might be nice, or I'm not sure, then yeah, just do it. Yeah, just come along and enjoy. KMCA is so comfortable as well. It's just such a comfortable place and such a peaceful place to spend that time. And three principal
How true.
aspects. Yeah,
And of course, it is a silent retreat, as you said. And also, I love what you said about how even if you never do something like this ever again, what a meaningful way to spend a couple of days.
yeah,
Yeah, and it can't not change you. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really
That's it.
wonderful. The title and the description, it may make it sound like it is a little bit advanced, or maybe it's for serious practitioners. But of course, everyone is welcome all the time to all of our
Yeah.
events. So if somebody maybe is new and they're wondering, is this for me?
Mm.
What would you tell them?
Well, I'd just tell them to come. Like I don't think things appear to us for no reason. And if this retreat is even appearing to our mind, then we should say, I'm not going to miss that. It's not that it's too advanced. Everyone needs those realizations. And so it's not outside the possibility for anyone, even if they've never been to anything before. We definitely don't end up in a retreat that's not meant for us by mistake. So I'd say, just if you've got any doubts, just set them all aside, turn up. You won't be sorry that you did. I hope.
That's really, really wonderful, Monlam. Thank you. And of course, I don't think anyone could be sorry for attending this retreat and hearing teachings from you and spending time in silence
Yeah.
contemplating this beautiful poem. Now, of course, Kelsang Monlam, she's our teacher in Adelaide. That's normally where you are spending your time. You're just, coming out for the weekend to teach this retreat. What's happening in Adelaide? Maybe listeners from South Australia might want to get more involved. Are there any events coming up where you are that you want to let us know about?
Yeah, there are actually. We're doing a workshop in the middle of June on dealing with loss and grief. And there's just been, so much interest in it, and so many people, coming along that that need to be able to find some peace in that definite experience that we all share. So it's so important that people know that there is a way to deal with that, to not feel overwhelmed by it, even though of course it's a loss and it's a time of sadness, but not just when we lose people in our lives, which we all will, but when other things change in our life and we experience losses, relationships that come to an end, or jobs that come to an end that's not our choice. And we can feel lost at lots of different times in our life. So I think that, there's such important teachings. It's interesting because over the last few weeks we've been doing meditations on precious human life and death at GP classes, and it's so interesting how people just find themselves at that class. And teachings are exactly what they need to hear, that they've recently experienced some loss, or they just need those teachings, particular teachings.
Well, Monlam, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks so much for your honesty, for your candor, but also for being really inspiring. From again from that leaflet that sat, at home for a whole year, yeah,
Mm.
to then
Yeah.
where you are now.
Mm.
Just a lot of wonderful examples for us in there. So thank you so much for speaking to me
Thank you.
today. And of course, we're looking forward to having you here in Melbourne
Yeah.
over the Monarch's birthday long weekend for what will
Great.
be a fantastic retreat.
Yeah.
Thanks so
Great.
much.
Thank you.